Kasama batachinoy, besamay emetnor, sami kades mangustinta, fegadi besamay indionech, endihu bemedir tihun, yala janjarachnen sitenzare, bedelachnem ikkerbelen, igna yebedalnen ikkerendemenil, awada fetna matagban, kalkifu adenenen fi, mengest yante antenantena, Heilige Maskan,
In the name of the African ancestors who began the march of humankind in the womb of Mother Africa, we ask these ancestors to be with us, to strengthen us, and give us a vision for the future. In the name of the African ancestors who began the march of humankind in the womb of Mother Africa and marched down the Nile, laying the foundations for human civilization and culture, we ask these Africans to be with us, to strengthen us, and give us a vision for the future. In the name of these African ancestors who built their pyramids and their temples to their God concepts, to their principles, and to their moral values, who left us a legacy of architectural and monumental building unparalleled in the history of the world, we ask these ancestors who built the pyramids, who built to be with us, to strengthen us, and give us a vision for the future. We ask these African ancestors who took this African culture and extended it throughout Africa, building the stone cities of Zimbabwe, building the empires of the Sudan, Ghana, Mali, and Songhai, building the Swahili city-states along the east coast of Africa, and in Christian Africa asking King Lalibela and giving him the courage to build the 12 churches of Lalibela from the ground down, monuments to the world. We ask these Africans who spread this culture to the Dogo and to the Akan and to the Yoruba and to the Bankango and to the Zulu. We ask these Africans to be with us, to strengthen us, and give us a vision for the future. In the name of the Africans who opened up Africa, opened up the Nile Valley to other cultures and other peoples, and they came in and nurtured themselves on the African greatness. First coming in early with the ancient Hebrews, and they synthesized this culture and produced Judaism. Later coming in were the Christians, and they synthesized this culture and produced Christianity. Coming in were also the Greeks, who took the African culture, synthesized it, and produced Greek civilization. And then later, the Prophet Muhammad, and with the Arabs coming into the Nile Valley, they synthesized the culture and produced Islam. We ask these African ancestors, who as part of their legacy laid the foundations for Judaism, Christianity, Islam, and Greek civilization, to be with us, to strengthen us, and give us a vision for the future. We ask those African ancestors pulled out of Africa, taken to the hells of North America, South America, the Caribbean, maintaining the spirit of African humanity in their hearts and in their minds, and who left us this enormous legacy of struggle. We ask those Africans who resisted enslavement in the villages of Africa, who resisted enslavement in the shores of Africa, who resisted enslavement in those forts and dungeons, who resisted enslavement in the holds of those ships, who resisted enslavement when they arrived on these shores in the New World. We ask these Africans who ran into the highlands of northeast Brazil and established for 100 years the first free republic in the Americas, the Republic of Palmares, and their last great leader, Zumbi, whose spirit and sacrifice. We ask these Africans who replicated the Brazilian experience and went into the highlands of Jamaica and became the maroon-free communities. We ask these Africans who went into the backwoods of the Guyanas and Suriname and created free republic of the Suramaka and the Ajuka. We ask these Africans who went into the backwoods of Georgia and the swamps of Florida and moved with the Seminole Indians and resisted oppression. We ask these Africans who left us a legacy of struggle and resistance, the likes of which no one in the world has, to be with us, to strengthen us, and give us a vision for the future. We ask these Africans who created and laid for us a foundation of struggle and resistance that was passed on generation after generation, that was passed on to Harriet Tubman, who fought her way out of enslavement and became a symbol of freedom for all of us. Similarly, Frederick Douglass and hundreds of thousands of others fought their way out of enslavement. We ask those Africans who went with Boukman Dessalines to create the greatest revolutionary experience in the history of the world, the Haitian Revolution, leaving us a legacy, the likes of which no one else has had. We ask these Africans to be with us, to strengthen us, and give us a vision for the future.
Let us start our class with a prayer. Heavenly Father, Divine Mother, friend, beloved God, Jesus Christ, Bhagavan Krishna, Mahavatar Babaji, Larry Mahashai, Swami Shri Yukteswarji, our Guru, Paramahansa Yogananda Ji, saints of all religions, we bow to all of you. Heavenly Father, Divine Mother, great Gurus, receive our love, receive our desire to love you more, to attune our hearts and minds with your great presence. Om. Peace.
Speak truth to the people. To identify the enemy is to free the mind. Free the mind of the people. Speak to the mind of the people. Speak truth. Hide nothing from the masses of the people. Tell no lies. Expose lies whenever they are told. Mask no difficulties, mistakes, failures. Claim no easy victory. When we lose our African connection, we lose our world connection. When we disconnect ourselves from Africa, we cease to be a world people. Without the African connection, we are a disjointed people begging for the entry into somebody else's house.
Reading from the Hosea, the book of Neferti. And His Majesty Pharaoh Nephro said, "Come, Neferti, my friend, and speak to me some beautiful words and well-chosen phrases which might please me upon hearing them." And the teacher priest Neferti deplored what had come to pass in Egypt, speaking on the condition of the East, where Asiatic peoples roam in strength, frightening those about to harvest their crops and seizing cattle even at the plow. Neferti said, "Be moved, my heart, and mourn for this land in which you were born, for there is silence before evil. What should be condemned is feared, and the great are overthrown in the land of your birth. Tire not then while this evil exists. Rise up against that which is before you, for lo, the great no longer rule the land, and what was established has now been undone. May Ra begin to re-establish this land, for it is ruined and nothing of value remains. Not even the black of a nail has escaped the fate. Lo, the land is destroyed, and there are none to care for it. There are none who speak, and none who weep. How then fares this land? I shall speak of what is before me. I will never foretell that which will not come. A strange bird will breed in the Delta marsh and make its nest beside the people of Egypt, for the people will let it approach through lack of action, and afterwards all good things will pass away. Beasts of the desert will drink at the river of Egypt and take their ease on the shores, for they will have no one to fear. The land is in turmoil, and no one knows what will come to pass, for what the future will bring is hidden. And as it is said, when sight and hearing fail the many, those who cannot speak will lead. I show you a land torn up by turmoil. That which should not be has come to pass. People will take up weapons of war, and the land will live in confusion. People will spill blood for bread and laugh out loud at pain and misery, and none will weep over death. Everyone's heart shall care only for him or herself. A person will sit with his or her back turned while one murders another. I show you the son and daughter as enemy, the brother and sister as foe, and the child slaying mother and father. I show you the undermost turned to the uppermost. But a king shall come from the south, named Ameni, the vindicated one, the son of a woman of Nubia. He will join the double crown, and the land will be enclosed in his grasp. The people of his reign will rejoice, for Ameni, the son of man, will make his name for all eternity. The evil-minded plotters of treason will hold back their speech through fear of him. The Asiatic invaders will fall before his fury, and the Libyan invaders will be consumed by his flame. Rebels will yield before his wrath, and traitors will be brought low by his might. Then Ma'at, righteousness and order, will return to its place, and Ifset, evil and chaos, will be driven away. Reading from the Hosea, the book of Nefertiti. I have a right to a Pan-African opinion. I am African not because I was born in Africa. I am African because Africa was born in me. The words of Assaji for Dr. Kwame Nkrumah. And in the words of Dr. Yusuf Ben-Yakanan, when your God and your Savior looks like your master and your enslaver, you become the principal agent in your own destruction. Good morning to you. Good morning. Ank Uja Seneb. Ank Uja Seneb, life, prosperity, and health to you. Welcome to the space. You're inside of the Africa Forum, where plain speaking is the order of the day. This, of course, requires some plain speaking. And for the sake of Africa, let us speak plainly. Always bearing in the mind that appearances to the mind are of four kinds. Things either are what they appear to be, or they neither are nor appear to be, or they are and do not appear to be, or they're not and yet appear to be. Rightly to aim in all these stars, in all these cases, is a wise woman's task. The words there of Epictetus. At 14 minutes after 6 o'clock, thank you so much. Thank you so much for joining us inside of the Africa Forum. We acknowledge our ancestors upon whose shoulders we stand. My name is Kabu Ma'at Kiru. My broadcast assistant this morning is Shamara Preston. We're going through until 10 o'clock. That's when the big A comes in with the Sunday sunshine. Stay with us. Lots inside of the program this morning. Lots happening around us. We're still in the throes of COVID-19, SARS-CoV-2. And it looks like, even though there's talk of opening the economy and opening the global economy, the global workspace, that there's still so much confusion and uncertainties that our heads are spinning. I feel especially for the students who are about to take the CSEC exams and the CAPE exams. Feeling especially for them because there's just so much bickering around that. And if you recall around the time when you were doing your O-levels, A-levels, CXCs, CSECs, how anxious you were. And there's hardly any student who's not anxious, no matter how bright you are. And then on top of all of that, the back and forth thing on this, then to hear that, oh yes, it's going to happen, but you're going to have to wear a mask. And the question is, the anxiety with the mask over the face, it's not even funny, you know? So there must be ways of doing this to put our student or young ones at ease. And the public discourse isn't helping at all, I don't think, in terms of how we're working it out publicly. CARICOM aside, you know, the way we're working this out publicly isn't helping. So I do hope that parents are finding the time to help their children who are going to be sitting these exams to calm down, to breathe, to not be anxious, to don't even think that this is the end all and the be all of it here. We must find a way to tune out and to get our children to tune out of all this bickering around what's going to be happening with the exams, what's going to be happening with school. Yeah, I mean, they can talk a little bit about it, but not too much. This is just too much. So kind of get them to tune out, you know, and read a book, walk for a minute, go outside and get some sunshine, vitamin D, teach them life skills that you didn't have the chance to teach them before, do things together, you know, and take it down a notch. I don't have anyone, you know, of that age right now that's close to me that's going to be doing. Oh yes, I do. I do. So I'm going to have to give her a call. I do. So, but when you think of it, how anxious these children, these young people must be. You know, I want to go to the idea of the mask, because now we're told that they're going to have to wear masks while they're sitting the exams. And I wonder about that. I do. Because you know how anxious you get when you do the exam already. So all of that anxiety with a mask over your face. Are you going to prepare for the fainting? And the passing out and the vomiting? You know, there must be a way to do this without the masks. That's what I'm thinking. The exams I'm talking about. I think we probably should look at that again. Or also find out from, well, you do have on their files information regarding their health. And so that, for example, if somebody is asthmatic or has any kind of respiratory illness, then you'd probably know that. And would that student be mandated to wear a mask during exams? These are some of the issues I think that we should look at. I would say no mask at all during the exams, but I don't know, you know, I really don't know. I don't know. They say, from everything that I've read and listened to and researched, the masks are really, not that effective against anything. It really is to lessen, the possibility of the person who has COVID-19 transmitting that to another person. And then even that is suspect from everything that I've read, everything that I've researched. So it's something that we're going to have to look at. It's something we have to look at for the students who will be sitting CSEC and the CAPE exams. I know parents must have questions regarding that, and I don't blame your parents for asking those questions. They must be asked. If you've got them, then ask them. Raise them at the highest level. We're very concerned about that. I know, things have to get back to as new normal as possible. But then we still have to be careful how we go. So as I said before, we have a lot coming up inside of the program, but we're going to take a quick break and come back and talk about that and the clash and so on and so forth. All right, so a quick break. We'll be right back.
Sign up for the JN Money Card. It's safe, convenient, and free. The time by JN Money is
now 22 after 6 o'clock. You're inside of the Africa Forum. It is Running African. Thank you so much for joining. So, let's just get this out of the way and done, right? Because we're going to have to go to our thing. We've got a lot to get through. But yeah, so I don't know how many of you saw the clash last night. That's Versus, Beenie Man and Bounty Killer. We all watched it, I'm sure. Well, many of us watched it. And hence so many of us are tired this morning because we watch that and then we watch it after party, and you know how that goes. All right, okay. Well, we'll watch it in any way that we could. So, many people are saying on the social media, and you would have seen that, that Jamaica won last night in that Bounty Killer Beenie Man versus encounter. So many people are saying that Jamaica won. And those who are saying Jamaica won, you are exactly right. I do agree with that sentiment. I did have a horse in the race. I always do when Beenie Man is in anything. So, without fear or favor, according to Yvonne Bacala-Sobers, Beenie Man won from before he started, right? And that's a bias. It is as clear as day. And many said Bounty won before he started. And that's a bias also. But when you take it down to the nitty-gritty, it's for you to decide and it's for you to have that conversation. But I really do agree with those who said Jamaica won. Now, it started off a little bit shaky. I'm very glad that I stayed with it because I was extremely disappointed in the first 10 minutes. They took a little while to get warmed up. They took a little while to find their footing, and it seemed a little bit really, really shaky. And they didn't really look confident in the first 10 minutes. I must say that. None of them looked confident. Didn't even like the way that they dressed like Bobsy twins. So that when Beanie Man took his blazer off, it made a lot of sense. It kind of, changed the me a twin and me and your friend kind of situation, because a clash will come for clash, So I was also disappointed that I wasn't seeing the clash that, I thought that would have happened. And so that first few minutes, it's probably more than 10 actually, that it was really shaky and you felt like, nah, I'm going to go to bed, I'm going to turn this off, I'm going to continue to, get my program ready for the morning. And that's how I felt. But it was picking up just before the police entered. And a lot of speculation about whether or not the police was part of the act or the police was a part of the act. But the police come to turn off the dance, to lock down the sound. And, because I really was thinking about that curfew thing, curfew, quarantine and so on. And Beanie Man and Bounty Killer didn't really spend any time thinking about the curfew or the quarantine or the self-isolation or the, distancing or staying 2 feet apart. None of that, because they were even hugging at one point. So that's another thing to talk about. But in the meantime, though, once the police came and Beanie Man did great, so people are saying whether or not this was an act or part of the act. That's for you all to decide. We don't have time for that this morning. But so Beanie Man said, you really want to do this? Do you want to be the guy who does this? Do you want to be the man who does this? You want to turn this off? Over 500,000 people are watching from all over the world. Do you want to be the one that turns this off? Do you want to be that guy? Well done, Beanie Man. Come back, Bounty. The police have gone. Many are also saying that it would not have been a dancehall clash or a dancehall anything without the police coming for locking off the sound. So that added to the authenticity. That added to the credibility of the thing. So that happened. One time also it dropped for a minute. Don't know if it crashed or what, but it dropped for just a few minutes. But so I said things were picking up just before the police came on, but after the police left, no, man dead, seriously. Things just catch a fire and it was brilliant. It was brilliant. A big people thing, But we noted also that the children were there, and so we wondered about some of those lyrics. Just I say, being a man, may I say, may your brethren and everything, and you have a brethren and everything. But we just I say, some lyrics that got on the way we never think should have got on because children they did it, but it was still a clash, so the pit them should never did it. All right, so that aside, Jamaica really did win. Many are also saying it's the best versus since versus. And, for those who saw the Erykah Badu, Jill Scott clash or friendly mashup, then you know that you'd agree with that and the others that went on before. But to say at the end of the day that it was a very good COVIDia. So those who were COVIDiating about this did a good job. Yeah, COVIDiating. We love that, yeah. Those who were COVIDiating did a very good job on this. And so congratulations. Brilliant work. We loved what we saw. Really enjoyed it, to say again. And once again, just to say and to underscore that Jamaica won. Right, so congratulations to all those who were involved in getting this together last night. Brilliant. Really loved it. We saw that it was picked up by CNN immediately, and the report from CNN headlined, Beenie Man and Bounty Killer compete in first reggae and in-person versus battle on Instagram Live. The latest versus between reggae artists Beenie Man and Bounty Killer was a party everyone expected as the two artists battled in person in Jamaica. It was the first time two musicians competed physically, as the previous versus battles were all virtual. Beenie Man and Bounty Killer came ready with coordinated outfits, each with their own DJs and a dancer. This is how we represent the culture. At the end of the day, it's a musical sport, Bounty Killer said at the end of the 2-hour live stream as he and Beenie Man sang Bob Marley's One Love. There's more from CNN, is there? All right, so CNN picked up on that. Also picking up on that in terms of internal news, because, can I just tell you, the international news outlets were ready with a story before any of the local news outlets, interestingly enough. But we were all watching it on all the news outlets too, because I saw them. So Hollywood Life also reported on that, on the clash within 2 minutes of its ending. And the report in Hollywood Life says, move over Nelly and Ludacris. Dancehall icons Beenie Man and Bounty Killer went head-to-head in the latest versus battle, and Rihanna was here for it. Another week, another versus battle. Beenie Man 46 and Bounty Killer 47 were the latest duo to face off on Saturday, May 23, and thousands of fans, including Rihanna 32, were here for it. The dancehall edition had the Instagram and Twitter verses boogieing away on their couches until a brief pause when the police showed up. Riri was not about to let the cops stop the party, and hilariously had some words for them in the comments. Tell the police to go home, she begged, adding, come on, office, and let the tune run, man. She can say that again. While it wasn't stated why exactly the cops showed up, the Jamaican government website states that a nationwide curfew is in effect from 8 p.m. to 5 a.m. daily, and the interruption definitely fell in that time frame. Despite rules, Beenie Man had some words of his own for the officers. We have thousands of people watching us all around the world. Do you want to be this guy? He could be heard saying to the cop, explaining to the 400,000 fans that the police are here, but we're not stopping. The police are gone. We're Jamaicans. We're being nice, he added before jumping back into the tunes. Rihanna made her presence known shortly after the hours-long event started, shouting, Bounty Killer, and it's getting hectic round here, later asking, who keeping score? Several other celebs were getting down to the tunes, including Missy Elliott, Gabrielle Union, Ashanti, and Diddy, who showed some love in the comments. And it was dubbed a clash of the icons. Timbaland and Swiss Beats official versus account announced a showdown last week. The pair are both pioneers when it comes to the 90s dancehall sound, popularizing the genre around the world. Beenie Man, born Anthony Moses Davis and dubbed the king of the dancehall, first made waves with Invincible Beenie Man, etc., etc., etc. And Bounty Killer, born Rodney Basil Price, is equally known to the dancehall realm, etc. And right, so that's the report in Hollywood Life last night, and they were quick out of the gate with reporting, and there are many other reports since that online of the epic clash. I don't know how they're going to top this one. It's going to be hard. I see people calling for Buju Banton and Sizzler. I see people calling for Lady Saw and Spice. There's all these calls. But brilliant. I think you can still catch it in terms of watching it again on YouTube or Instagram or wherever you can catch it. It's worth watching. I'm just saying, it's a big people thing though. I still feel that. I also feel that Beenie Man didn't necessarily have to go there last night in terms of the lyrics. Didn't need to. He did, and I'm not quite sure where he did, but why he did. But he didn't necessarily have to go there. So I think Bounty Killer was more responsible of the two, although he went some places too. But the love between these two brothers, really great to see that. I covered them for years because they were big in the 90s, as you know, and that was a time when I was doing entertainment journalism like crazy. And so these brothers, I covered them from beginning. And so that I know where they're coming from with the vitriol that was between them over the years and years and years, to the point where one year Mr. Young took a decision that no, we're not going to interview them about their anger and their vitriol. When they're ready to make up, then we'll carry that live. Which, GT, remember you did? Long before anybody else did. You just never get a credit for it. But thanks to GT Taylor, you had that locked. So we're happy to see, that love, genuine love between Beenie Man and Bounty Killer. Good. Good for the country. Good all around. Enjoyed it. The COVID-18 was brilliant. Nice. Good work. So everybody did their dance last night, and it was just what the doctor ordered after we're in a lockdown for so long. So one time when I was preparing for this program, and with me a beanie, what I had to get up, and I had to just enough tatty last night. I'm not hiding it from you, and pepper seed and the rest of it. I was just in the whole thing. I was waiting to bogle, but I never quite get on to the bogle, but I did tatty, the pepper seed. And what I don't want the name again, but we do all of them. Yeah, man, we did them, man. So it is exactly what the doctor ordered. Boost the immune system, I'm sure. All right, so that's that for the clash last night. If you missed it, you missed something really nice. Don't watch it if you don't love dancehall. Just saying. The dancehall thing. All right, so we're back with you. Just a quick note of what's coming up inside of the program this morning. Let me tell you what we're going to be doing for the morning. It is a very special day on the island, a very special day for black people, generally African people, because this is Sunday, May 24, and today represents the anniversary, the 72nd anniversary of the departure of the departure of the ship, the Windrush, SS Windrush, from Jamaica to the United Kingdom. So this morning, we're going to be looking at that. We're going to be talking about the Windrush in a moment. All right, so as I said before, we're going to be looking at paying some tribute this morning and paying attention to what's happening around us, but in particular, looking at the Empire Windrush, Tillbury docks, and the Caribbean in Britain. 72 years after the Empire Windrush set sail from the Kingston Harbour for Tillbury docks in the United Kingdom. A lot in recent times have been said about the Empire Windrush and the Windrush generation. Tillbury docks, of course, was opened in 1886. And if you put that in perspective, you'll understand around the time, thinking that the 1865 was the Morant Bay War. So 1886 was when Tillbury docks was opened, opening the way for trading goods and operating passenger services with connections to the rest of the world. The floating river landing stage was opened in 1930 by Prime Minister Ramsay MacDonald, expanding the passenger line services at Tillbury, allowing berths of liners at all states of the tide. And many notable persons travelled through Tillbury docks, including Mark Twain from America and George Orwell coming back from France. Both recorded their experiences of the occasion. It was in 1948, though, 1948, that is important to this conversation. And you know, every time I think about Tillbury docks, I think about Malcolm X and the speech he made about Plymouth Rock. We did not land on Plymouth Rock. Plymouth Rock landed on us, he said. It's a similar thing when I think of Tillbury docks. That it wasn't that literally Tillbury docks landed on so many Caribbean people, African people, who thought they were literally going home to the motherland empire, you know. So in 1948, it was Tillbury docks that received the first post-war Caribbean migrants. And they landed at Tillbury docks on the ship, the Empire Windrush. That ship departed from Jamaica on May 24, exactly 72 years ago today. But the story of the Empire Windrush itself starts before war, pre-war. In 1936, Blom and Voss, shipbuilders of Hamburg, they built the ship. Its first use was as one of Hitler's strength through joy ships and named the SS Santa Rosa. A sister ship, the SS Wilhelm Gustloff, visited Tilbury landing stage before the outbreak of the war in 1939 to collect German nationals and to take them out beyond a 3-mile limit to allow them to vote. Mainly, they were voting for Hitler's Nazi party. It is believed the SS Santa Rosa was used during the war as a troop ship and was captured at the end of the war, becoming a bounty ship. It was later converted at Tilbury docks by the ship repairing company Green and Silverware for uses as an immigration ship and renamed the MV Empire Windrush. The Empire Windrush set sail from Kingston, Jamaica on May 24, and that was actually Empire Day because it was somebody's birthday. It was Empire Day, 1948, with 492 official Caribbean migrants, and these were a mixture of Trinidadians, Jamaicans, and Bermudans, but also numbers of troops. There were lower deck passengers and a few stowaways. Each of the mainly black migrants, including many who had served in the armed forces, had paid £28 to travel to Great Britain. £28 in today's, if you're going to balance it with what it might have been today, is somewhere within the region of £1,000. So for our four parents who were on the Windrush and ships that were leaving within that period. Because when you talk about Windrush, it really is a ship. But that period, when we talk about the Windrush generation, is between 1948 and 1971, around about that time. So you see, people were going, there was traveling from Jamaica, from Barbados, from the Caribbean islands, also from Africa into the UK for that period. So calling them the Windrush generation is a misnomer, really, but it is what it is. So they named it after the ship. So can you think of our four parents paying £1,000 now to travel to Great Britain in response to job advertisements in the local newspapers in their country? So here in Jamaica, there were also, advertisements in the newspaper. There were also indications of favorable job prospects, and they thought that they would have been given a warm welcome. Jobs were also scarce in Jamaica, partly because of the disastrous 1944 hurricane, which had weakened the economy and made prospects in the motherland. Yeah, the motherland, the UK, Britain, even more attractive. There was also a hardening policy of restricting immigration to the United States. So it was easier now to go to work in the motherland, which is Britain. So the ship anchored in the river on the 21st of June. It left Jamaica on May 24. It got to Tillbury docks in Essex on the 21st of June 1948. It actually spent 30 days at sea. At about 4 a.m., a number of people were seen getting into and launching one of the life rafts, which had a quick release mechanism. This was reported to the bridge, but by the time an officer arrived to investigate, the life raft was disappearing into the darkness and running at a fast-running ebb tide. It was soon intercepted, though, by customs launch. So that life raft that, was set sail from the Empire Windrush, which was docked in Tilbury docks, in the wee hours of the morning, 4 o'clock, that would have been now June 22, actually had stowaways, because there were stowaways on that ship also. So it was reported by the local press, and I quote, Mr. Ivor Cummings, a coloured member of the Colonial Office Welfare Department, came on board that night with other officials to talk with them. End of quote. The migrants apparently had a wide range of skills to offer those who were on the Windrush, coming in from Jamaica, from Barbados, from Bermuda, from Trinidad. And these skills included painters, carpenters, boxers, farmers, musicians, and a dance band. Remember, Lord Kitchener was on that Windrush, Lord Kitchener was on the Windrush. He was interviewed, actually, coming off the Windrush. And he was asked, I heard that you're Lord Kitchener, that you're called Kitchener. And he said, yes. And I heard you're a musician. And he said, yes. And the interviewer said, sing something for us. And he sings, about London is a place to go, and so on and so forth. So on the 22nd of April, they started to disembark at Tilbury docks and began their new lives in Britain. I know that many of you listening this morning can identify a parent, a grandparent, a relative who left between 1948 and 1971 to go live in England and live and work in England, going to the motherland. And they went as British citizens. But that's a whole other thing, because we have to talk about that. So, as they disembarked on the docks, if you watch all of those videos, all the documentaries talking about this, and we're going to play one of those documentaries for you in a little while. So the local reporters observed the fashion of the men, and they talked about the dazzling tie designs. Also, another member of the crew remembers that while on board, many made up some pretty nifty trousers in zoot suit style, apparently made up from the high-quality Canadian blankets issued for bedding on the ship for the crossing. So you see how our people stay there. You see them get the blanket for the crossing, and them just make trousers with it, zoot suit. So the Grays and Tilbury Gazette newspaper reported the following week that in total, 15 stowaways were discovered, 2 in the life raft and 13 on ship without a ticket. They were sent to Gray's Magistrates Courts that week. They were fined £1 for the first charge of travelling on a vessel without having paid their fare. without having paid the £28, and the second for secreting themselves on board. They could pay the fine or have 7 days in prison for the first offence and 10 days for the second offence. The sentences to run concurrently. One man, however, had no identification papers, and it was reported he would be sentenced to 30 days imprisonment and be deported. The majority of the travellers were soon on their way to prearranged addresses and contacts. For others with nowhere to stay, accommodation was found in the Clapham Deep Shelter, which is a part of a northern tube line, which had been used as an air raid shelter. In March 1954, after a fire on board the Empire Windrush, it sank in the Mediterranean with the loss of 4 men while bringing home 1,500 servicemen from the Far East. An idea of the Empire Windrush, a little bit about the Empire Windrush, and also about Tillbury docks. And we're going to be talking about the Caribbean in Britain, how our people who were invited after World War II to come and work in Britain from the late 1940s to the early 1960s and then into the 70s. Thousands of Caribbean men, women and children, they left the Caribbean. They left by sea, they left by air, they left for Britain. We're going to talk this morning to two persons in particular who left by air. My grandfather was one of those who left by ship. Left when my mother was, I don't even think she was born yet. So he left by ship, and he went as part of this whole, Windrush generation thing, Empire Windrush, to go live and work in England. I spent, and for those who have heard me perform publicly at public events, I've performed at Poetry in Motion and the Jamaica Poetry Festival poems that I've written about the conversations I've had with my grandfather about those times, the stories he told me about those times. We were pretty close. He died when he was 90 years old. And I spent a lot of time with him, and especially during those years when I was studying in England, I had to pass his house to go to school, and I would, stop there in the mornings, in the evenings, and we'd have a lot of conversations. He'd come visit me where I was living, and we'd have many conversations about these times, about the ship, about traveling by sea, about finding the money to pay the fare to go to England, about what was expected and what was actually found there, the reality, the racism, the raising of the colour bar, stuff like that. So this has a specific and a particular meaning to me today, May 24, when we talk about 72 years to the day that the Empire Windrush set sail from Kingston Harbour to Tillbury docks in Britain. I remember and pay tribute to my grandfather, Stanford Reed, who was one of those persons who left Jamaica by ship to the United Kingdom back in the 1940s. Also, we know how things are. There's hardly any Jamaican today who's listening and who's not listening who wouldn't have had someone or known someone, a close family member or a friend or, immediate family who was part of this migration. Literal exodus between the 1940s and the 1970s, who left the Caribbean by air and by sea for Britain. They were encouraged by the 1948 British Nationality Act, and that act granted citizenship and the right of abode in the UK to all members of the British Empire. And so Jamaicans were considered members of the British Empire. Questions still abound. Why did the people go to Britain? What did they leave behind? What did they find when they arrived in Britain? And how did they shape Britain? My grandfather has told me many stories of how they shaped Britain. Do you remember that we did a book? I kind of reflected on the book that we did in high school, Samuel Selvon, Ways of Sunlight. And the stories of Caribbean people trying to exist in Britain. I don't think that the syllabus allowed for the as wide a teaching as possible, and the breadth and the depth of Ways of Sunlight, Samuel Selvon's Ways of Sunlight, as it could have. And I hope that if it is still being taught in schools, if people are still reading this book in school, that by now would have widened the scope of how we teach Ways of Sunlight. Because if you had no idea, if you weren't making that connection between this Britain, this country that was short of workers and needed to rebuild its weakened economy, if we didn't understand the extent to which our Caribbean people were leaving the Caribbean to go to Britain to work in the manufacturing sector and the public transport. There's a story in Ways of Sunlight, for example, that's called Working the Transport. I think it's something like that. I remember, there's also a story there. I can't remember the name of it, but there was a quote in it where someone in Trinidad or someone in Britain was asking, do you know, guess who's coming? Guess who's coming to Britain? And it was someone from Trinidad who was coming. And so there was a whole lot of talk about that. Working the Transport is an interesting story in Ways of Sunlight. But I think that that could have been taught from a history perspective as well as a literature perspective. But for me, I did not learn the history of Ways of Sunlight. I learned only the literary aspect of Ways of Sunlight. But when we are presented with gems like that, to teach, it is a chance to teach history. It's a chance to teach about ourselves, living history and so on, because that was still an ongoing thing. Men and women were needed to rebuild an economy that was weakened by the war years, especially in those sectors crucial to the reconstruction program. So they were working in the production of raw materials such as iron, steel, and coal, as well as food. As a matter of fact, I'm going to be talking in a little while with Mr. Barrett, Mr. Ashton Barrett, and we can get him on the phone lines right now, because I'm going to be talking to him because he went to Britain by air, and he worked in the food, the production of food, that industry. Mr. Barrett is now 90 years old and is up and ready to have this conversation with us. So we're going to start there by talking to a 90-year-old stalwart who was part of the Windrush generation. He did not go by ship, he didn't go by boat, but he went by air and was gainfully employed in the production of food. There was also a huge backlog in England of essential maintenance and repair work and service shortages in the construction industry. So a lot of our people worked in the service sector, they worked in the construction industry, and both men and women were needed in England to also work in the NHS, the National Health Service, and a lot of them went there too and worked in the NHS. So we're going to talk about that this morning. So we're going to be talking to, just before we get Mr. we'll get Mr. Barrett on the phone lines in the meantime, but we're going to be talking to very special guests this morning, and I'll tell you who they are right after this.